Rugby Championship week number 2, folks. Wallabies up against the Springboks. Chance for the Wallabies to show us something else after a very disappointing performance over there in Brisbane. And a chance for a much changed Springboks side to show us just how deep the depth in South Africa goes. We'll go through the squads, some predictions, some stats, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this game is going to go. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, folks. That'd help us out tremendously if you like your rugby content. Wallabies, they've brought in a new prop. Thank goodness for that. Angus Bell. I rate him. I reckon he's a really good prop. Pleased to see him back into the starting lineup. Remember, he's not had that much rugby this year. He's had his injury woes. Has Angus Bell. Certainly one of the best props in the world around the park, but it's in the scrum that it's going to matter. How does he go up against the likes of a big Thomas du Toit is going to be a really interesting one to watch. If he can at least get parity, then his readmission into the Wallaby squad is going to be most welcome. They absolutely need to do better at scrum time because last week was a slaughter. Josh Nass is up from the bench to start a hooker, and Ala Latoa, who was under the pump, continues on at tight head. There's no Tupou for this one. He's over in Tonga attending to his father's funeral, sadly for him. But we obviously wish him all the best. But the Wallabies could certainly use a guy of that size back. Family priorities obviously come first. Angus Blythe is in the second row because they've had a bit of an injury crisis. Have the Wallabies with Jeremy Williams not being available for this one. Nick Frost not being available for this one. So with him and those two guys and Dalguna getting a kind of broken leg in last week's game, the injury ward for the Wallabies is growing. But yeah, Blythe did get some game time in July, so he gets a chance to do it against the number one side of the world this week. Salakaia-Loto continues on in the second row. Interestingly, some journalists tried to trap him. They tried to ask him if it was disrespectful for the Boks to be making all these changes, and he pointed to the number of Rugby World Cup winners in the Springbok squad. So silly journalist question avoided by Lukan Salakaia-Loto. Well done, mate. Back row is still Valetini at 6, Tizano at 7, and Harry Wilson at 8. You feel like Harry Wilson, who can impose himself on games, will be looking to do more of that in this game because he was kept pretty quiet last week. Valetini had a heap of carries last week, but was likewise not able to get that much pay from the South African defence. And then Carlo Tizano doesn't really make the team for his ball carrying. He makes it for his tackling, of which he did a lot. 19 from 19 tackles last week was a good shift on debut. Did give away kind of one really stupendously silly penalty, but also won a good turnover. So not a bad one in what was a pretty poor outing for the Wallabies, as I say. They've brought in Nick White at number 9 because Jake Gordon's unavailable this week as well. So one would expect he will be putting in a few box kicks because that is certainly his forte. Lolosio continues on at number 10. Been copping a fair bit of criticism, including a bit from myself, but hard when you're going, well, when you're running the show behind a forward pack that was really on skates going backwards last week. So Lolosio gets another chance, but we'll see if he's able to do anything with the boot, try to find some space behind the Springboks on rushing defence. Paisami and Ikitau continue on in the midfield. Paisami got the only try for the Wallabies last week against 13 men, but he did manage to get it. And then Corin Benny becomes the first overseas pick for Joe Schmidt. Every other guy in the squad thus far that he has picked has been based in Australia, but Marika being based in Japan, his recall and his experience will be welcome. Remember, he is a really tireless work rate guy. He just runs all day long. Even at 32, he's still quick, he's still powerful. And he replaces Dalguna, as I mentioned, has got a broken leg. So they'll be looking to get every bit of impact they can from him. Callaway continues on the right wing, and then Tom Wright likewise continues at the fullback position. Bench-wise, Billy Pollard comes into the 23 as a replacement hooker. Slipper and Nongo continue on as the replacement props. Tom Hooper is a pretty big unit at number 19, and Sira Uru is a pretty big unit at number 20. So Uru could get his debut if he comes on. If you're not familiar with either of these guys, for most fans who maybe don't watch Super Rugby, both these guys are basically locks and loose forwards. They're those kind of hybrid players. So some big bit of beef to come off the bench for the Wallabies, potentially to bolster things up front. Tate McDermott continues on as your replacement 9. Donaldson takes Liner's spot as the replacement 10, and then Jorgensen will get his debut if he comes on. Still a teenager, that man, but really, really exciting one to watch. Hopefully he gets some ball and can get into some space, because that's something the Wallabies really, really, really struggled to do last week. Now for the Boks, I mentioned all these changes. Goodness me. Vessel's in at loosehead. Krobala in at hooker. Dutoy comes in at tight head. Marat's in at second row, and he captains the side. Nokia, his first ever test start for the Springboks alongside him. So that's an all-change type 5. You feel like the Wallabies will be breathing, even if they're not going to say it, a little bit of a sigh of relief that it's not the same guys. But then when you look at the bench, that sigh probably becomes a bit of a groan, because if for some reason the Boks are in a bit of trouble with the inexperienced guys getting the crack, they do have... Is that the best bench you've ever seen? I don't know. That's a hell of a bench. World Cup winner, 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 World Cup winner. Yes. There's a lot of World Cup winners on the Springboks bench, a lot of experience. So, Rusty backs this starting type 5 that he's picked. He basically said if these guys had played the starting 15 from last week, he reckons they would have given them a good run for their money. So we'll see if they're able to kind of live up to that billing. Van Staden's getting a start this week after being on the bench. Toy switches to his more familiar back row position after locking the scrum late change last week. And El Ricolo continues on at number 8. Really pleased for him. I think he got like 40, 50 odd minutes last week at number 8, and I thought he looked really busy around the park. I like it. Busted a few tackles. Pleasing, exactly what you want to see. Van der Berg gets a chance at number 9 for his first ever start. For the Boks, really attacking-minded. Number 9, I love the idea of him playing alongside feinberg-mngomezulu. Those guys are both attacking-minded players, and yes, I think they could cause some havoc if they are given a bit of space. Is at 12 this week. Kind of unfamiliar position for him. He's played there before, but is usually a 13 by trade. So him and Creel in the same lineup with no De Lende in the squad this week. Colby is on the right wing. If he stays on the right wing, or is he going to step in at 9? Is he going to play some other positions? We'll kind of have to wait and see. Veteran Mapimpi is there on the left wing, speaking of World Cup winners, and then Fassi is there at fullback. Now, it's an interesting one to watch at 15, because even though Leroux still gets a bit of stick, I don't think you can underestimate just how often he comes in and grabs the ball at first receiver to get that kind of back line humming. Fassi is obviously individually a better attacking player than Leroux, but in terms of opening up space or choosing those right options for other guys, that's where Leroux's primary skill set sits these days. So yeah, it's going to be a different style with Fassi, but I like Fassi. I reckon he's a good player, and he's played well in the chances he's been given this year. So yeah, different but interesting. Marks, Inche, and Koch. That's what I'm mentioning about this bloody bench. That could cause some havoc when they come on. I just want the Wallabies to get some parity. I don't even, dreaming to ask for kind of dominance at scrum time, but just keep things kind of even. Don't give away a penalty every single time. Etzebeth on the bench. Quaka Smith on the bench. And then 3 backs this week with Grant Williams, Marnie Libok, and Hondre Pollard. So a couple of 10s on the bench. Although remember, Pollard came on and played a bit of 12 last week. So one would imagine he might do a bit of that again this week too. No Ben Jason Dixon. He's got a niggling injury. And Achia Sneeman still not available after missing out, being a late scratching last week. But yeah, a bunch of the other guys basically just rested by Russie for this one. So yeah, I mean, Russie basically talked about it's a squad of 33. And unlike the Irish series where he kept things stable, the outcome of the entire Rugby Championship is not resting solely on this game. So you can kind of see why he is changing the lineup up. I don't buy into any of this disrespectful stuff. Sides change their lineups all the time. If you watch the Six Nations, teams often change their lineups, especially when they're playing Italy, but not just against Italy. If you've won really comfortably last week, why not give your young guys a chance? I reckon it's just kind of what you do. I mean, the average age of the forwards last week was 30. This week it's 27, so it is definitely a fair bit younger. Stats-wise, I mean, the scrum. I'm going on about the scrum because it was just imperious from the Boks last week. Every Springbok feed, I think, pretty much led to a penalty. I think Alatoa gave away at least 3 penalties at scrum time. So yeah, it was troubling. They dominated possession. They dominated territory in the first half. Second half, with all those yellow cards, not so much. They would like to certainly keep that aspect of their game a bit sharper, one would imagine. It's kind of hard to predict what the variations the Boks might throw at you this week with so many kind of seemingly random, like just the Colby positioning, like I mentioned, and then like the line-out double pod move thing coming on. What are they going to do this week? It's going to be your guess as good as mine, basically. Australia, very, very quiet on attack. 2.5 meters a carry is really low. Remember, you want to be aiming for 3s plus or preferably 4 meters a carry. That's generally getting good go forward ball. 2.5 meters a carry is horrendously low. I mean, Kurtley Arendse for South Africa last week had more run meters than the entire Aussie starting backline combined, which is not great news. And Eben Etzebeth, I think he had 40 run meters. Individually had more than any single Aussie player did last week. Like Dylan Peach came off the bench early and got 33 run meters. For Etzebeth to be getting more than the best Aussie player, like even the fullback who usually gets a few free ones, fielding kicks, like that's troubling. The breakdown will certainly need to be more accurate from the Aussies. 15 penalties conceded against a side like South Africa is just way too many. They conceded 9 clean breaks and only generated 4. So, yes, lots of areas to improve for the Wallabies. But hey, it's a much changed box side, so maybe there's a wee chance for them to kind of to at least get some points on the board and put the less experienced Bok guys under pressure. We'll kind of have to wait and see. The last time these sides played at Perth, which is where it's being played this time, I believe was 2017. And that was a 23-all draw. That was Michael Checker up against Alistair Coetzee. So a lot has changed since then. And it's not predicted to be that kind of scoreline this week. The Boks are heavy favourites. 12 points with the bookies. 17 points with the Rugby Forecast algorithm. I'm also fascinated to see if we see a similar South African turnout like we did in Brisbane, because there were seas of green in those stands in Brisbane. And Perth certainly has a fair few South Africans. So, yeah, if you're a Wallabies fan, you might want to get along. I think there's still some tickets. If you can justify spending your hard-earned cash on some rugby tickets, because I know they're expensive, but yeah, the Wallabies need some support, eh? It's gonna be an interesting one. 5:55 local kickoff time, is it? Yes, 5:45. That might be the broadcast time, but yeah, kind of decent kickoff time for rugby. Hopefully we get some good weather and some good entertainment. Paul Williams from New Zealand is the ref. If New Zealand have lost the preceding game against Argentina, I'll certainly be getting on the Clippies. But, yeah, fingers crossed we see a New Zealand win prior to this game, and then a more competitive Australian game. I would certainly like to see that. But, yeah, we'll see how things go. If you're in the States and you want to check it out, these games, the Rugby Championship, is on Flow Rugby. I'll put a link down in the description for you guys in America to watch the games on replay or to watch them live. That's where they are at. Otherwise, you guys let us know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Drop us a comment. Drop us a like. I'd appreciate it. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.